another topic, which is the series that we've been discussing so far for the past few weeks. If you've been following us, you know that we've been discussing about the court system, understanding the court system, the structure of the court and how it works. And we've talked about the magistrate court, we've talked about the state high court. Last week we discussed the federal high court. And today we'll be discussing the Court of Appeal. I'm sure you've heard of Court of Appeal, right? Like you've heard of the Court of Appeal. I mean, if you're in Nigeria, you've heard of the courts. You know, there is the magistrate court, there is the state high court, there is even customary court, there is the federal high court, there is the Court of Appeal, there is the Supreme Court. And we said earlier that there is this hierarchy in the court system. Hierarchy in the court system for the sake of order. You know, things should be done orderly. It's not that I have a case and I should just walk into any court and like, hey, my lord, please adjudicate on this matter. No, there is hierarchy. It means everybody ought to know the court he or she ought to institute his or her case. So it's not just about having a case and walking into any court and just like, okay, I want to file, I want to do this, I want the court to hear me out. No. It's subject to the majorly the course of action. That's the circumstance of that case that determines the court you should institute your action. Majorly that is like the major factor. So last week we discussed the Federal High Court. So today we'll be looking at the Court of Appeal. What is the Court of Appeal? Now, from the word appeal, you know it's about something, right? It's about something. So first of all, let me start like this. The Court of Appeal is the second in hierarchy. Now, when I mean second in hierarchy, I mean that there is the highest court, like the courts of highest jurisdiction, the final court that you can ever go to. And after that court, which we'll be discussing next week, so you don't want to miss that. So after that court, then we have the Court of Appeal. So when we mean the second in hierarchy, we mean like the second in command, or the second court after the highest court. So it's also it's a higher court. The Court of Appeal is a higher court, is the second in hierarchy, and it is next to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the final and your last bus stop. So, but we're discussing Supreme Court next week. So the Court of Appeal is the second in hierarchy, and originally it came into existence in 1976. Yes, by 1976. Well, actually, it was not, you know, when it was established, it was not established as Court of Appeal. The name before was called the Federal Court of Appeal. It was called the Federal Court of Appeal, and it was the Intermediate Appellate Court. We've had it since 1963. Now, so to show you that the Court of Appeal was not just in existence in 1976, it has been in existence, but it was just an Intermediate Appellate Court in 1963 before it became the Final Appellate Court. So that is that. Then the Court of Appeal is headed by a president. It's usually called the President of the Court of Appeal. There is just one president of the Court of Appeal. Like every Court of Appeal, every Court of Appeal is headed by a president. So the head of a particular Court of Appeal in a particular judicial division is the president. Then we have the president, and this president of the Court of Appeal is usually appointed by the president of the country. The president of the Court of Appeal, or let's say the justices of the courts. Let me start from there. The justices of the courts. Now, there are justices and there is the president. Now, if there's a case and the Court of Appeal wants to sit, the Court of Appeal doesn't just sit with the president alone. They are usually justices with the president. So, other justices of the Court of Appeal are usually appointed by the president on the recommendation of the National Judicial Council. However, the appointment of the president of the Court of Appeal is subject to the approval of the Senate. Now, I want you to understand this. I don't want you to get mixed up. There are justices. In fact, even the president is a justice of the courts. It's just that by virtue of that office, I mean, somebody must be the head, right? Somebody must lead. So is a justice and at the same time the president. Now, justices of the Court of Appeal, those that sit to adjudicate on the matter, they are usually appointed by the president on the recommendation of the National Judicial Council. It means that the National Judicial Council will recommend justices, and the president of the country will make the appointment. However, for that office of the head of court, which is the president of the court, his own appointment is further subject to the approval of the Senate. That's how it works. So the justices of the court are elevated to the apex courts. Some actually retire due to the constitutional retirement age, and new ones are appointed from the Superior Court of Record. So we have some justices from the Court of Appeal. They can be elevated to the apex courts, while some will have to retire as a result of the retirement age. They retire. So what else should we know about the Court of Appeal? Let's talk about the structure. I've said it that the headquarters is in Abuja. Headquarters of the Court of Appeal is in Abuja. There is the office of the president, who is the head of the court. We have the office of the chief registrar. We have the accounting officer of the court. And these people, the accounting officer of the court reports directly to the president of the court. There are other various departments, heads of various departments. We have the finance and accounts. We have administration and supply. We have library and information services. We have election petition tribunal. We have the ICT. We have the planning, research and statistics and audits. All these departments report to the chief registrar. So that's that on the structure, basically the structure. Now, what is the duty of the Court of Appeal? The Court of Appeal is an appellate court. An appellate court means that it hears appeal. It hears appeal. Its primary duty, primarily, the Court of Appeal hears appeal. So you cannot file a case, a new case, like this case is fresh, it is new, and the court that comes to your mind is Court of Appeal. In fact, even by the name, the Court of Appeal. So it's duly constituted for the purpose of hearing and determining appeal, either civil or criminal. It hears appeal from the Federal High Court, from the High Court of the State, from the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory Abuja, from the Sharia Court of Appeal of a state, from the Customary Court of Appeal from Abuja and other states, from the Code of Conduct Tribunal, from Election Tribunal, particularly with the National Assembly Election Tribunal, the Governorship and Legislative House Election Tribunal, appeals from the tribunals, election tribunals, Court of Appeal, High Court, Federal High Court, appeals. So appeals is what? When does a person appeal? It means your case has been heard. You filed your case in a lower court and you are not satisfied with the judgment. You are appealing. It's just like you can see a case that started from the magistrate's court and we get to the Court of Appeal. You file in the magistrate's court, you are not pleased. You file with the High Court, you are not pleased. From High Court, you can move to the Court of Appeal. And if you are not pleased, you can go to the final bus stop. So, but primarily, the Court of Appeal duty is to hear appeal. The only case or the only situation where it acts as a court of first instance is in a presidential election petition. It means that court of first instance means that I'm filing it afresh. I'm filing it anew. The only case that can be filed anew in the Court of Appeal is any case revolving around the presidential election petition. Apart from the presidential election petition, every other matter that is heard from the Court of Appeal are appeals from the lower courts. I hope you understand that. So we should actually know that one. So if someone steals suing someone for theft or burglary, or you're suing someone for rape or anything, you can't bring it to the Court of Appeal. You can't file it afresh in the Court of Appeal and say, okay, I want the Court of Appeal to hear my matter. No. That case must have started somewhere. Either magistrate court, either the state high court, either the federal high court, either the customary court of appeal, either the Sharia, and you are not satisfied and you are bringing it to the Court of Appeal. Now, when at the inception of the court, it started with just 3 judicial divisions: Lagos, Kaduna, and Enugu. But as a result of the Court of Appeal Amendment Act 2013, it has recently increased to 90. Now, this is just for the administration of justice. Because of the as in the number of cases the court has, so there is a need for divisions. The headquarters is located at Abuja, but there are divisions. We have in Kano, we have in Sokoto, we have in Owerri, we have in Ekiti, Yola, Maduguri, we have in Jos, we have in Ibadan, we have in Benin, we have in Port Harcourt, then of course Abuja, we have in Ilorin, we have in Calabar, we have everywhere across the federation. Why? For the dispensation of justice. But the headquarters is in Abuja, but we have judicial divisions everywhere. So basically, that is what we should know about the Court of Appeal. Jurisdiction: civil, criminal, of course, civil, criminal. However, there must be appeals. Appeal meaning that I am not satisfied with the judgment and I am bringing it to the Court of Appeal for them to hear my case. And we've talked about the fact that the structure is structured in a way that there is the president of the court who sits with justices, at least 3 justices when they want to hear an appeal. So it's not just the head of court that sits alone. The justices are appointed by the president on the recommendation of the National Judicial Council. However, for the position of the president of the court itself, the president of the Court of Appeal is subject to the approval of the Senate. So it means the Senate, after the president has appointed, the Senate will have to approve the appointment, subject to the approval of the Senate. We've also talked about the justices, we've talked about the origin, and we've talked about their jurisdiction and their location where they are. So with this brief presentation of the Court of Appeal, an overview of the Court of Appeal of Nigeria, I hope you'll be able to understand the uniqueness of the court. Yes, the uniqueness of the court. So whatever case it is you might have, whatever nature, imagine cases from federal high courts, cases from high courts are brought to the Court of Appeal. So it means the Court of Appeals hears every matter, no matter the nature of the case, no matter the subject matter, no matter you understand, no matter the matter, the Court of Appeal hears it. However, it's not a court whereby it's not a court of first instance where you just come to file your case afresh. It must be matters that must have been heard from the lower court and you are not pleased with it and you want to appeal. So that is why it's called an appellate court. Primarily, it is an appellate court. However, it only acts as a court of first instance in presidential election petition. Of course, Court of Appeal, then Supreme Court. So that will be all for today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you have any question, you can leave your question, type your question, leave a comment, share, like, and join us next week as we bring this series to an end. We'll be discussing the Supreme Court next week. So until then, my name is Oluwatosin Isaac, and I'll see you next week Thursday on another session on Asset